the stars disappeared. At first, people thought it was an eclipse, some astronomical phenomenon blotting out the night sky. But eclipses don't stretch across continents. They don't ripple with unnatural precision, black silhouettes cutting through constellations like knives through paper. The stars weren't gone. They were hidden, swallowed by something vast. Above Earth, shadows emerged. Black vessels, silent and unannounced, descended through the atmosphere. They didn't roar like rockets or thunder like aircraft. They drifted, smooth and unbroken, as if they had always belonged to the void. No warning, no broadcasts, no messages, just silence. In Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, command centers lit up with alarms. Satellites scrambled to track the incoming ships. Generals shouted across secured lines. Pilots raced to their jets. And in every living room on Earth, television screens flickered to breaking news. Objects in the sky. Unidentified. Massive. In New York, crowds filled the streets, necks craned, staring upward. Shadows slid across skyscrapers as something impossibly large passed overhead. Children clung to their parents. Some people screamed. Others dropped to their knees, praying. Then, the first ship broke the clouds. It was nothing like the sleek saucers of fiction. Nothing like the shining beacons humans had imagined. It was alive, or seemed to be. Its hull glistened, black and wet like chitin. Segments pulsed as if veins carried something beneath its surface. Great wings, bladed, jagged, folded inward as the ship descended, blotting out the sun until Manhattan was swallowed in shadow, and still no sound. The world waited for a voice, a demand, a warning. Instead, the ship simply hovered. For hours, governments tried to communicate, radio waves, lasers, broadcasts in every known frequency. Nothing. The ships didn't answer, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge. They simply hung above Earth, casting their silence as the greatest threat of all. Then, without warning, they opened. Panels along the undersides peeled back, revealing countless smaller shapes. They poured out like insects from a hive. Black, armored, glinting in the half-light. They weren't drones, they weren't machines. They were soldiers. The Kraith had arrived. On the streets of Paris, people scattered as the first alien warriors landed. Towering insectoid creatures with blade-like limbs, eyes reflecting firelight, and armor that shimmered with an unnatural sheen. They didn't speak. They didn't declare war. They moved with purpose, as if war had already been decided. Human militaries responded instantly. Fighter jets screamed into the skies, missiles locked on targets. For a heartbeat, hope flared. Human. Technology had brought down giants before. Why not now? But as the first missiles struck, they fizzled harmlessly against shimmering shields. Jets were swatted from the sky like flies. Tanks rolled through city streets, firing shells that exploded uselessly against the alien armor. Soldiers, brave and desperate, poured fire into the advancing lines only to watch bullets ricochet. The Kraith didn't hesitate. They advanced, blades cutting, claws tearing, black blood spraying as they dismantled everything in their path. In Los Angeles, skyscrapers burned. In Berlin, smoke covered the sky. In Tokyo, whole districts fell silent in minutes. And through it all, no words, no demands, no communication. The Kraith hadn't come to conquer. They had come to exterminate. Panic spread faster than fire. Civilians ran through the streets, trampling one another in desperate escape. Families were torn apart in the chaos. People screamed into dead phone lines, searching for loved ones who would never answer. The world, so used to hearing human voices, of war, rallies, speeches, promises, found only silence in its place. That silence was worse than any declaration of war. In a bunker beneath London, military leaders debated nuclear options. Could they risk turning their own cities into glass just to slow the invaders? In Moscow, generals slammed fists on tables, demanding a counterstrike that couldn't exist. In Washington, the president's voice cracked as she whispered, "We don't know how to fight them." The truth spread like poison. Humanity had no plan. And yet, something stirred. In basements, in subway tunnels, in the hearts of those who refused to kneel, a whisper grew. If technology couldn't save them, if armies couldn't hold the line, then survival would have to come from something older, deeper, more primal. Unity. For the first time in human history, every nation looked not at their borders, not at their rivalries, but at the sky. The enemy wasn't one another. It was something else. Something that saw them all as prey. The Kraith expected silence to crush humanity. Instead, silence became the spark of defiance. Blood came before hope. The Kraith descended like a storm, cold, calculated, unstoppable. Cities fell, armies shattered, and governments trembled in the shadows of ships that darkened the sky. Humanity had no answers. No weapon pierced alien armor. No shield held against their claws. But when the last bullet was gone, when the last defense line crumbled, what remained wasn't surrender. It was rage. In the ruins of Philadelphia, smoke choked the sky. Skyscrapers lay in broken heaps, steel, twisted into molten rivers. Survivors hid in what had once been a subway station. Its tunnels were black with soot, the air heavy with the stench of ash and blood. Among them were soldiers who had survived the collapse of their units, men and women without orders, without commanders. Alongside them huddled civilians, their eyes hollow, their voices gone. Children cried into blankets to smother their sounds. They had nothing. No artillery. No air support. Just scavenged rifles, homemade explosives, and hatred that boiled hotter than fire. Captain Marcus Hale looked at his people, the broken, the wounded, the furious. His uniform was shredded, his face smeared with soot and dried blood. Yet his voice carried strength. "They bleed," he said. "And if they bleed, they can die." The plan was suicide. But it was all they had. They set traps in the tunnels. Oil, drums filled with gasoline, pipes wired with homemade detonators, sharpened rebar coated in glass and poison. Civilians smeared soot across their faces, arming themselves with kitchen knives, crowbars, even sharpened sticks. When the ground shook, they knew the enemy was coming. The Kraith patrol moved with terrifying precision. 10 warriors, armored in glistening carapace, blades drawn, mandibles twitching as they scanned the ruins. Their movements were silent, efficient, like predators walking through a cage of prey. But this cage wasn't empty. A tripwire snapped, a thunderclap of fire roared through the tunnel. Gasoline ignited, swallowing the first 3 Kraith in a fireball. Their shrieks rattled stone as their armor boiled. Still, the others pressed forward, their shields flickering against flames. Then came the humans. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Bullets sparked and ricocheted, but some found cracks, slipping between plates. A Kraith staggered back, ichor spraying like black acid onto the concrete. The battle dissolved into chaos. Civilians lunged with knives, stabbing into joints and throats. Soldiers swung rifles like clubs, smashing chitin. A boy no older than 14 jammed a sharpened pipe into the belly of a warrior twice his size. The Kraith fought back with merciless strength. Blades carved through flesh, claws tore through walls. Screams echoed as humans fell, blood mixing with alien ichor until the floor ran slick. But for every human that fell, another rose with vengeance. Captain Hale tackled a towering Kraith, driving a bayonet into its throat. The alien shrieked, black blood spraying over his face, burning his skin like acid. He didn't stop. He ripped the blade free and plunged it again and again until the creature collapsed, twitching, and then silence. The tunnel was littered with bodies, human, alien. Blood soaked the earth in shades both red and black. Survivors stood panting, trembling, coated in gore. They had done the impossible. They had killed them. In the aftermath, civilians dragged the alien corpses into the open. For the first time, they stared at the enemy not as gods or demons, but as flesh that could be broken. Warriors of a race that had seemed invincible now lay lifeless, their blood staining human soil. The survivors tore a banner from one of the Kraith, an insignia marked with clawed runes, and raised it high, drenched in alien ichor. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't even survival, but it was proof. In the ruined streets above, a message spread. From whispers in bunkers to shouts in refugee camps, the Kraith can die. The effect was electric. Across battlefields, across nations, scattered pockets of survivors felt a spark ignite. They had lost cities, armies, and millions of lives. But in one ruined subway, a handful of humans had shown the truth. This war wasn't just invasion. It wasn't extermination, it was a fight. And humans had just drawn first blood. If humans couldn't keep their homes, they would turn them into graves. The Kraith advanced with relentless precision, their insectoid armies flooding through the ruins of every major city. Where they landed, silence followed. Streets emptied, buildings gutted, survivors erased. The world's defenses crumbled piece by piece until only scattered resistance remained. But defeat didn't bring surrender. It brought fire. In the smoking ruins of Chicago, Colonel Adriana Ruiz stood atop a half-collapsed overpass, watching alien patrols carve through the streets below. She knew she couldn't hold the city. No one could. But she also knew something else. If the Kraith wanted to claim Earth, they would inherit only ashes. Her voice carried through battered radios, through the whispers of survivors, through underground tunnels where humanity's remnants huddled. If they want our cities, we burn them. If they want our roads, we break them. If they want our food, we starve them. Nothing they touch will be left unscarred. It was not a strategy. It was a vow. That night, flames lit the horizon. Refineries exploded into towering infernos. Black, smoke curling into the stars. Bridges were wired with charges and reduced to rubble. Fuel depots, power grids, and supply lines, obliterated by human hands. In New Orleans, survivors filled the Mississippi River with burning oil, turning the water itself into fire. In Warsaw, tunnels were collapsed to deny the Kraith entry. In Beijing, entire districts were evacuated, then leveled in coordinated detonations. Everywhere, humanity chose destruction over surrender. The Kraith didn't understand. They had conquered dozens of worlds before, civilizations that bent under the weight of their blades. But Earth burned itself rather than feed its invaders. What the Kraith saw as madness was, in truth, a weapon sharper than any sword. In the Appalachian Mountains, refugee families fled into forests, carrying nothing but what they could hold. Mothers carried children wrapped in blankets, fathers hauled makeshift weapons, and elders stumbled with the weight of memories left behind. Yet when they turned to look at the distant glow of their burning homes, none wept, because grief had hardened into resolve. Colonel Ruiz herself led one of the most devastating operations of the campaign. Her unit, reduced to less than 100 soldiers, infiltrated the Chicago financial district. With alien patrols swarming, they planted explosives in the foundations of skyscrapers still standing. At midnight, as the Kraith marched triumphantly through the streets, Ruiz gave the order. The towers fell. Steel and glass rained down in thunderous waves. Whole blocks collapsed, burying the alien forces under mountains of rubble. Fire engulfed the skyline, painting the night in red and gold. The city's destruction was absolute. Chicago wasn't lost. It was erased. The Kraith howled, their shrieks echoing through the ruins. They clawed through debris, tearing at collapsed structures, searching for survivors. But there were none. Only ash, only fire, only death. The message was clear. Humanity would rather destroy everything they loved than let it fall into alien hands. Word spread like wildfire across the globe. From bunker to bunker, refugee camp to refugee camp, the vow grew louder. Scorched earth. Farmers poisoned their own fields rather than let the invaders eat. Engineers flooded tunnels and railways to cripple enemy movement. Soldiers detonated ammunition depots even as they bled out, smiling as the explosions consumed alien war machines. Humanity had lost its cities, its armies, its comforts, but not its will. In space, the Kraith commanders debated. Their victory had been swift, but their spoils had vanished. Instead of wealth and resources, they inherited ruins. Instead of slaves, they inherited corpses. Instead of a broken people begging for mercy, they inherited fighters who seemed to grow stronger with every loss. This war would not be like the others. In the forests, under the mountains, deep in the ashes of their own cities, humans gathered and whispered the words as if they were sacred. If they want our world, let them choke on its ashes. The Kraith believed fear would break humanity. Instead, it sharpened them. The invaders had learned from their first defeats. They no longer underestimated human traps or ambushes. Instead, they answered with brutality. If a village resisted, it was burned. If a town sheltered survivors, its people were slaughtered. Whole families were dragged into the streets, executed to send a message. But messages can be read in two ways. To the Kraith, it was dominance. To humanity, it was blood debt. In the ruins of a small Colorado mining town, black smoke curled into the sky. The Kraith had left nothing but charred beams and ash. Bodies hung from broken lampposts, their shadows stretching long across the rubble. A boy named Daniel knelt in the dirt beside his parents' remains. He didn't cry. His hands, coated in soot, carved words into a stone with a jagged nail. "We will avenge." When soldiers found him hours later, he didn't speak. He simply pointed at the words he had written, and they understood. Across the world, stories like his multiplied. In Mexico, refugees painted murals of their dead on the walls of shattered cathedrals. In Nigeria, survivors etched the names of lost villages into steel plates scavenged from wreckage. In Poland, children pressed bloody palms to broken concrete, leaving crimson handprints that whispered of vengeance. These were not memorials. They were promises. The resistance began calling the war by a new name, the Blood War. It wasn't about land or borders anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was about balance, repayment in blood. For every child murdered, a Kraith would fall. For every home burned, an alien nest would be turned to ash. Humanity wasn't just defending Earth. Humanity was keeping score. Captain Marcus Hale, scarred from the battles in Philadelphia, led one such campaign. His unit, ragged and hungry, marched through the Appalachian foothills with fury in their eyes. When they stumbled across a Kraith outpost, Hale didn't order an ambush. He ordered an execution. "We bury them," he said. "We bury them the way they buried us." The fight was savage. Guns barked, blades clashed, and the night screamed with violence. When it was over, every Kraith in that outpost lay in pieces. The humans left their corpses strung across trees, a message painted in black blood. Debt collected. The aliens noticed. For the first time, Kraith patrols hesitated before entering abandoned towns. They feared the silence of empty streets, the shadows that whispered with human rage. Their commanders raged, demanding more force, more slaughter, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. The Kraith had thought humans were prey. Now they looked at Earth and saw something else. Predators who hunted differently. But vengeance came at a price. For every victory, 10 civilians suffered. For every Kraith slain, 100 humans died. The resistance fought not with strategy, but with fury, and fury was a double-edged blade. Villages were abandoned, food stores dwindled, and survivors starved in the wild. And yet, even in suffering, humanity refused to kneel. In the ashes of Los Angeles, survivors painted messages. Across the ruins, we remember. In the mountains of Afghanistan, warriors sang the names of their dead before striking alien patrols. In Brazil, guerrilla fighters carried the skulls of their enemies on spears. Everywhere the Kraith looked, they saw not despair, but rage that refused to die. One night in a cave hidden deep in the Rockies, Captain Hale addressed his people. They were exhausted, their bodies battered, their stomachs empty, yet their eyes still burned. "They kill us to break us," Hale said, "but they don't understand. Every death is a chain. Every loss ties us together. We are not weaker, we are heavier. And when the weight of our blood falls on them, it will crush them." The cave echoed with silence. Then, One by one, the survivors pressed their hands into ash from a burned-out fire, smearing it across their faces like war paint. Not as soldiers, not as victims, but as avengers. The blood war wasn't just survival anymore. It was personal. Armies fell. Shadows rose. The Kraith thought they had broken Earth. Cities smoldered, armies were shattered, and survivors scattered into the wilderness. But what they didn't understand was simple. Humans didn't need armies. They only needed shadows. And shadows kill differently. In the Appalachian forests, mist curled through the trees. A Kraith patrol moved cautiously, their clawed feet crunching over wet leaves. 10 warriors, armored in black chitin, weapons gleaming with alien fire. They scanned the woods with mirrored eyes, but the forest was alive with silence. They never saw the first shot. A single bullet hissed from the tree line, piercing a narrow gap beneath one warrior's jaw. He collapsed, choking, ichor spraying into the ferns. Before the others could react, fire erupted from 3 directions. Gunfire cracked, mines detonated, trees exploded into splinters. Humans struck and vanished, moving through the undergrowth like phantoms. When the smoke cleared, not a single Kraith remained alive. The patrol was gone. The forest had swallowed them whole. From Europe to Africa to the Americas, humans became hunters in the ruins. In Poland, snipers hid for days in collapsed bell towers, picking off alien officers one by one until paranoia tore units apart. In the jungles of the Amazon, fighters dug pits lined with sharpened stakes, luring Kraith war machines into traps that swallowed them whole. In the deserts of the Middle East, resistance cells moved at night, planting bombs along supply routes, vanishing before dawn left a trace. The Kraith advanced by daylight. By nightfall, they bled. One patrol commander, overconfident and cruel, boasted that humans were meat that fights. His words didn't survive long. His unit vanished in the tunnels beneath a ruined Paris. Days later, his body was found hanging upside down from the Eiffel Tower's broken frame, throat slit, chest carved with a single message in blood. The shadows remember. Fear began to shift. For the first time, the Kraith looked into darkened ruins and hesitated. They doubled their patrols. They lit fires through the night. They moved in clusters instead of ranks. But no amount of caution saved them. Because the humans were already there, watching, waiting, learning. And when the lights went out, the aliens screamed. Captain Marcus Hale, scarred but unbroken, led one of the most infamous guerrilla campaigns. His unit became ghosts in the Appalachians, slipping through mountains and forests, striking when least expected. One night they ambushed a Kraith convoy. Hale's people detonated charges on the mountain pass, burying the lead vehicles in rock. As the Kraith scrambled, gunfire rained from above. Men and women with faces smeared in ash attacked from every angle. The Kraith fought hard, but they were fighting shadows. When dawn broke, the road was silent. Vehicles burned, alien corpses scattered like broken statues. Hale's people left, only a single marker carved into stone, a blood debt paid. The Kraith commanders raged. They increased bombardments, turned their weapons on forests, flattened towns, and poisoned rivers in retaliation. But every act of destruction only deepened humanity's rage, and humanity adapted faster than the aliens could comprehend. In abandoned cities, humans learned to move through sewer tunnels, striking beneath enemy feet. In frozen Siberia, survivors used the blizzards as cover, vanishing in storms to cut down patrols. In the ruins of London, fighters used church bells as signals. 1 toll for danger, 2 for ambush, 3 for slaughter. Everywhere, humanity became whispers, phantoms, nightmares in the dark. A Kraith commander finally admitted in the silence of his quarters, they are not prey. They are hunters. For the first time in the war, the balance shifted. The Kraith still held the skies, the cities, and the firepower. But humans held something greater: terror. Every streetlight that flickered, every shadow that stretched too long, every silence in the night carried the same promise. You are not safe here. In the Appalachian caves, Hale's people gathered around, a dying fire. Exhausted, starving, scarred. But their eyes burned bright. "We can't outfight them," Hale said, his voice low but steady. "But we can outlast them. We can bleed them until they fear the dark. And when they fear the dark, they've already lost." The fire crackled. Nobody argued, because everyone knew it was true. For the first time, the hunters became the hunted. The Kraith had ruled the skies, dominated the cities, and shredded human armies like paper beneath claws. But in the darkness, humans were learning. Watching. Learning faster than the Kraith expected. In the ruins of Tokyo, a small band of engineers and hackers moved through the skeletal remains of a fallen skyscraper. They carried a prize that had cost them months of scavenging and countless lives. A captured Kraith warship, stripped of weapons but not of potential. "This is it," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Tanaka, her fingers trembling over a cracked console. "This is our chance." Her companions nodded. Sweat dripped down their faces. Every shadow seemed alive with the threat of alien patrols, every creaking beam a potential death. Outside, a Kraith drone flew overhead, scanning for heat signatures. One mistake, one spark, and they would be ashes, but they couldn't wait. The Kraith were advancing, and humanity had no time left. Hours turned into tense minutes as the hackers bypassed alien firewalls, rewired circuits, and rerouted power through the ship's core. Screens flickered, lights blinked, and the vessel groaned under the strain. Every successful hack sent a shiver through the engineers because one false input could ignite the warhead or trigger alarms. Then, finally, the ship hummed with life. Its engines pulsed, dark veins of alien energy coursing through the hull. The console displayed a single line: operational. The crew exchanged looks: fear, relief, determination. It was ready. Outside, the Kraith advanced on a cluster of human survivors. Tanks, armored walkers, and infantry poured across the ruined city streets, confident that they would crush the remaining humans in one strike. They didn't see the shadows moving among them. They didn't see the humans who had learned to disappear and reappear at will, and they certainly didn't see the warship rising silently behind them. Lieutenant Tanaka's hands flew over the controls. Laser arrays flickered to life. Missile pods powered up. The vessel hovered above the city like a phantom, unseen until it struck. First, a salvo of missiles tore through a Kraith command vehicle. Explosions lit the streets, throwing alien soldiers into the air. Then energy beams cut through the armored walkers, their massive forms collapsing into flaming heaps. The humans on the ground surged forward, synchronized with the ship's attack, striking from above and below. The Kraith screamed. Their precision faltered. Their confidence broke. For the first time, humans weren't hiding. Humans were hunting. In the chaos, Captain Marcus Hale led a team through the streets, synchronized with the warship's assault. They struck patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and pulled Kraith soldiers into ambushes where humans waited with explosives and fire. By dawn, the battlefield was a nightmare of blackened armor, shattered vehicles, and the stench of alien ichor mixed with human blood. The warship hovered overhead, its lights casting a red glow across the ruins, a warning and a promise. Humanity had learned their enemy's strength, and they could turn it against them. Across the globe, other pockets of humans found their own captured technology. Alien drones, vehicles, and weaponry fell into human hands, repurposed and enhanced. Each victory was small but cumulative. Each battle reminded the Kraith that the humans they had underestimated were evolving faster than predicted. For the first time, Kraith commanders hesitated before deploying troops. Every move could be countered, every stronghold could be turned into a trap, every shadow could hide a human with fire in their eyes and alien weapons in their hands. Captain Hale surveyed the battlefield from a collapsed skyscraper, watching the Kraith retreat in disarray. His face was streaked with blood and soot, but his eyes burned with triumph. "They thought they could break us with fear," he said. "They were wrong. We've taken their weapons, learned their ways, and now we strike back. from space. To the ruins below, humans roared in unison, not in victory yet, but in defiance. They had survived impossible odds, adapted to the alien superior technology, and had begun turning the tide. The Kraith had conquered, yes, but they had not defeated. Everything led here. The sky over Earth was black with fire and metal. Alien warships hung like vultures, their shadows swallowing entire cities. The ground shook beneath advancing Kraith armies, armored walkers, clawed soldiers, and monstrous machines that crushed everything in their path. The air was thick with smoke, ash, and the metallic scent of blood. But Earth would not bend. In the ruins of Manhattan, Captain Marcus Hale and his battle-worn team prepared for the last stand. Every survivor, every fighter capable of holding a weapon had gathered. Soldiers, civilians, engineers, and children too young to bear arms all had a place. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted, but they were not defeated. Hale surveyed the cityscape, crumbled skyscrapers, shattered streets, and fires that stretched to the horizon. From the rooftops, human snipers waited. In the subways, engineers primed explosives. Guerrilla fighters had converted every ruined building into a fortress, every alleyway into a kill zone. The Kraith would pay for every drop of blood spilled. The first wave hit just before sunrise. Alien walkers crashed through the streets, spewing fire. Clawed soldiers swarmed rooftops, cutting through barricades with terrifying speed. Human artillery fired back, missiles streaking through smoke and fire. But it barely slowed the horde. Then came the shadows. From hidden alleys, tunnels, and collapsed buildings, humans emerged like phantoms. Snipers picked off officers. Explosives ripped through armored machines. Children rolled barrels of burning oil into streets. Every human knew the stakes. Every attack was personal. Every strike was vengeance. Hale led a squad into the heart of the battle. The ground shook as they sprinted over debris. Kraith warriors lunged with blade-like limbs, but Hale struck with precision, taking down two with one swing of his bayonet. Behind him, Sergeant Elena Kovac detonated a cache of explosives, collapsing a half-block and crushing an advancing walker. Smoke and fire painted the streets red and gold. Screams, human and alien, echoed through the ruins. Blood mixed with ash, turning the streets into a river of violence. For a moment, it felt like the end of everything. But humanity refused to end. From above, stolen Kraith warships rained destruction on alien formations. Lasers cut through enemy ranks, missiles tore armored walkers apart, and the ground forces synchronized their assault with the aerial strike. Every attack was calculated, every death avenged. The Kraith faltered. For the first time in the war, they hesitated. Orders screamed down the chain of command, but chaos reigned. The humans they had underestimated for so long were no longer shadows. They were an unstoppable storm. In the center of the city, Hale confronted a Kraith commander. Towering above him, a beast of armor and claw, the two collided with a force that shook the ground. Hale dodged a slash, rolled beneath the alien, and drove his blade into the creature's carapace. Black ichor sprayed over Hale's face, burning, but he didn't falter. Again and again, he struck until the Kraith fell, screaming and broken. Around him, humans fought as if possessed. Every street, every alley, every rooftop became a battlefield of fury and defiance. They bled. Yes, but they also killed, and with each Kraith that fell, hope flared brighter. By midday, the tide had turned decisively. Alien forces were trapped in ruined districts, cut off from reinforcements and falling to guerrilla attacks from every side. Fires consumed armored machines, collapsed buildings buried soldiers, and stolen human weapons tore through the Kraith ranks. The sky, once black, with alien dominance, was now streaked with smoke, fire, and the contrails of stolen warships. The city that had seemed lost was now a trap for the invaders. And then came silence. The surviving Kraith, seeing their forces decimated, retreated into the wreckage of their own ships. Earth was theirs once more, not pristine, not safe, but alive, broken, bloodied, and defiant. Hale stood amid the ruins, the wind carrying the stench of smoke and death. Around him, survivors tended to the wounded, carried the dead, and began the slow work of rebuilding, not just cities, but resolve. The Kraith had been taught a lesson that could never be forgotten. Earth had not been conquered. Earth had not been broken. It had bled, and in its bleeding it had won. The Kraith had fled. For the first time, the skies above Earth were empty of alien ships. Their shadow lifted. Cities were reduced to rubble, forests scarred, rivers poisoned. But the planet itself still breathed. Humanity, battered, broken, yet unbowed, stood on the precipice of survival. In the ruins of New York, Captain Marcus Hale walked through streets that had been battlefields. Fires still smoldered in heaps of debris. Alien carcasses lay scattered, black ichor seeping into cracked asphalt. The wind carried a metallic tang, the screams of the dead long gone, leaving only silence. And in that silence, there was triumph. Survivors emerged from hiding, their faces smeared with soot and blood. Children, too young to fully understand, clutched scavenged rifles and made offerings to fallen comrades. Elderly citizens, bent and weary, led the wounded to safer ground. Engineers and medics began salvaging the twisted remains of alien and human machinery alike. Everywhere, there were signs of life, signs of defiance, signs that Earth, though scarred, had endured. The Kraith commanders, observing from their distant ships, were humiliated. Their armies, thought invincible, had been shattered. Their technological superiority had been turned against them. Every advantage they possessed, their speed, their armor, their numbers, had been neutralized by human ingenuity, courage, and sheer willpower. Earth had reminded the galaxy why humans had been left alone. Hale climbed a collapsed skyscraper, surveying the city with tired, bloodshot eyes. Around him, banners were raised, not flags of nations but symbols of survival. Some carried the alien blood-red markings of stolen warships. Others bore the human crest stained with soot. From the ground, a child approached him, barefoot, carrying a broken alien blade in one hand, a tattered human flag in the other. She looked at Hale and nodded. There was no fear in her eyes, only understanding. This was what survival demanded. Across the world, pockets of humans began reclaiming their lands. Cities burned no longer. Rivers could be used again. Crops would be planted, supplies rebuilt. But humanity would not forget the cost of this victory. The dead, both human and alien, had carved lessons into the bones of the Earth. Strength alone does not win wars. Will, cunning, and unity do. The galaxy, watching, took note. Human blood had been spilled in abundance. Yet it had been turned into knowledge, into power, into defiance. Every scar on the Earth became a story that would echo through the stars. In London, survivors gathered in the ruins of Westminster. A moment of silence was observed. Mothers held their children close. Fathers, hands scarred and blackened from combat, knelt among the rubble. And then, in unison, they whispered a vow. Never again will we be underestimated. It was not a threat, it was a promise. The Kraith would never forget Earth. They had been taught in blood and fire that humans were not conquerable. They were not prey. They were survivors, relentless, adaptive, and unpredictable. And the galaxy, which had once seen humans as minor players, would now know better. Hale, standing on the shattered skyline, finally allowed himself a breath. His face was streaked with blood and ash, eyes hollow with loss yet burning with determination. Around him, the people of Earth began to rebuild, not just their cities but their hope. They had survived the impossible. They had turned despair into strategy, fear into fury, and blood into a lesson the galaxy could not ignore. The sun rose over the ruined horizon, gilding the wreckage with red-gold light. Smoke still curled into the sky and distant fires still burned, but the light shone brighter than any shadow. Humanity had bled, yes, but they had endured. They had triumphed. They had reminded the galaxy why Earth had been feared, why humans, had always been left alone. Moral suspense. Closing. The fight was not for glory, land, or conquest. It was for survival, and survival had forged humanity into something unstoppable. The war had been written in blood, and from that blood, humans had carved their legacy. The galaxy had learned, underestimate humans at your peril.